Reverie in Open Air by Rita Dove. I acknowledge my status as a stranger, inappropriate clothes, odd habits, out of sync with wasp and wren. I admit I don't know how to sit still or move without purpose. I prefer books to moonlight, statuary to trees. But this lawn has been leveled for looking, so I kick off my sandals and walk in cool green. Who claims we're mere muscle and fluids? My feet are the primitives here. As for the rest, the air now is a tonic of absence, bearing nothing but news of a breeze.
I am a stranger here. Rita Dove, Pulitzer Prize-winning Akron poet, captures her relationship with the natural world beautifully. Not quite fitting in her inappropriate clothes or out-of-sync preferences, not quite connecting to the leveled lawn before her until she flips off those sandals and realizes her place amongst the cool green and open air. Hello. My name is Amy Hirzel, and I am a high school English teacher in Parma Heights, Ohio. I am also a poet and lover of language and its ability to transform the world around us, and if we're lucky, ourselves. Today, we'll be exploring the beautiful Cuyahoga Valley National Park located in Northeast Ohio. This vast park captures the beauty and history of this region, and I'm excited to share it with you today. So much of this area has been touched by the rise of urban industrialism and then ultimately the crumbling of those Rust Belt industries. By using this place as a metaphor today, my hope is that you'll be inspired by the natural and human world around you and the connections and contrasts found where they intersect. I hope you're able to recognize the rich umber of autumn leaves in rusting smokestacks, the flash of bronze of the common carp in the swinging train bell, the cicada hum, and the cadence of your Doc Martens. So, let's start writing.
Today, we will be writing a poem about the intersection between the natural and human worlds. Ultimately, the best writing we do today will also be about our place in the natural world. You'll be asked to contemplate the human influence on the natural world that can be seen in your life and your space. The growing of tomatoes in a suburban backyard, the graffiti on ancient rock formations, the dams built to control the canal, or even the candy wrapper on the path. Our activity will have 3 major steps. Step 1, collect your artifacts. Step 2, describe your artifacts. And step 3, describe the connections found between them. So our first step is to collect artifacts. Choose a location either new or familiar to you, such as a park, your school grounds, a city sidewalk, or a country grove. Gather physical artifacts, take photographs like I did, draw pictures, record sound, or record video to collect at least one artifact from the natural world and one artifact from the human world existing in the same space. Find whatever interests you in the space you are today. Maybe it's a cool human-made structure surrounded by trees. Maybe it's a small stone and a bottle cap. Whatever is interesting to you. There's no wrong here. Our next step is to describe your artifacts. For each artifact, write a stanza or more describing the object. To help you, I recommend looking at the back of your handout at some of your writer's toolbox poetic devices. These can help you think of your artifacts in new and interesting ways. I especially recommend looking at imagery, comparison, personification, and those sound devices. Think about what makes them unique, what sets them apart, or how they contrast each other. Maybe put the 2 objects or sounds or pictures side to side and observe where they differ. Feel free to write down personal reactions as well. Ultimately, you are the lens through which these objects are filtered. Our third and final step is discussing the connection between the 2 artifacts in poetry. The final stanza should be about the connection between those two artifacts. I invite you to think about where you see the natural and human world melding, deteriorating, flourishing. What truth can be found here? How do you fit into this landscape? For my poem, I was inspired by two sounds at the Jate Paper Mill in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I ended up walking under some transmission towers near the train tracks up there and heard two sounds that I collected as my artifacts. I heard the humming of bugs in the field, and then I actually heard the electrical hum of the transmission towers. I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition of sound and then ultimately idea. So I took some time to free write about both those sounds. Then I wrote about what could possibly connect them. And then finally, I tried my hand at writing our 3-stanza poem. As I read, just notice that I tried to use some of our poetic devices, such as consonants, personification, and imagery. Noise pollution. If only I knew what to call you, because there's something in the naming of sound and creature that makes me feel present, like holy worship, penitent for years of black oil sins and failure to listen to your earth pulse and hymn. Above the sound of nameless bug gods, I hear the buzzing of transmission tower, tall metal monsters like ancient structure to some industrial god, sending static across train tracks and power lines. Hear us. Hear us. The small, nameless insects buzzing into void, hoping that anyone, someone, everyone will hear our tuneless prayer, will decipher our humming hymns as holy, holy noise.
So now it's your turn to be inspired by the intersections of the natural and human world around you. Remember, our activity has 3 major parts. Number 1, you need to collect your artifacts. Number 2, you need to describe your artifacts. And then number 3, you need to describe the connections found between them. Also remember that you're the writer today. You write honestly whatever you want. Everything I've gone over is simply meant to inspire you and your writing. Remember too that you really don't need to be in a beautiful national park to do this today. You can be in your own backyard. You can be in the parking lot of your school. You can be just on the sidewalk walking to school. Doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want and do this activity wherever you are. So now you have a choice. You can either stop the video now and get out there and write, which is honestly what I would do. Or you can listen to a small lesson on the poetic devices in your writer's toolbox, what's on the back of your handout, to really help prepare you for your writing journey so that you can use all the tools of the trade.
Well, thank you for sticking around. This last portion of this video will go through some of the major tools at your disposal to write poetry in an artful, crafted way. If you are a seasoned poet, these might come naturally to you. If this is one of your first times diving into the luscious world of poetry, then these tools can help you bring your artifacts to life. These are just tools, and just like crafting any piece of art, you don't need to use them all. The 3 main categories we will go over today are figurative language, sound devices, and structure. Imagery is really your best tool. Attempting to describe your artifacts in terms of your senses will help your reader feel like they are standing right beside you. The most important note on imagery is that it doesn't have to be simply what something looks like, but what something smells like or tastes like or feels like too. Use all the senses in your pre-writing, then pick your favorites for your poem. The next 2 are simile and metaphor. Comparing your artifact to something else can create interesting tension in your poem, as well as create a connection between yourself and your reader. They may not have seen the river that you're describing, but they may understand the folds of silky fabric that you compare it to. A note is that metaphor is stronger than simile. Saying something is something has a bit more weight than saying something is like something or moves as something. Use metaphor for a greater impact. And finally, personification. This is a fun one to play around with because you can actually make your artifacts living, breathing things with a vast array of human emotion. This allows us to connect with our artifacts on a human level, as well as allows us to play with our imagination of what our artifacts might say or feel. Our next category of tools is sound. Both consonants, the repetition of consonant sounds, and assonants, the repetition of vowel sounds, allows you to play with sound to create images. Our brains are naturally attracted to music. So playing around with soft, sweet sounds and harsh, discordant sounds throughout your poem can help emphasize the meaning of your poem. Maybe try to mimic the sounds of the rushing waves or the staccato tapping of heels on pavement. Finally, let's talk about structure. This is the backbone of your poem and allows your reader to follow your train of thought about these artifacts. Just like in essay writing, poetry usually builds on ideas in some way. The poem I wrote follows the first structure where you discuss the natural artifact, the human artifact, and then the connection between the two. However, there are many different ways you can show the contrasts and connections between the human and natural world. The second structure is if you want to incorporate both artifacts in each stanza. Think of each stanza like a point you're trying to make or an aspect of your artifacts that you are trying to explore. Then bring it all together at the end by how they are similar. Finally, the last structure is a challenging one, and I think a fun one. I'm a big proponent of playing with poetry, so looking at your poem like a mirror might be a different way to structure your ideas. On the left side, focus on different bits about your natural artifact, and then on the right side, talk about how the human artifact works as a mirror opposite image of the first. Perhaps you would focus on different senses in small bursts, or you might focus on different feelings you have while you look at both objects side by side. No matter how you choose to use these tools, trust yourself. You are the poet here, and this is your poem. I'm just here to give you a bit of inspiration. So use these tools or fashion some of your own to show something true and beautiful about the world around you. Now go out and write.